specifically as the Abu Slim massacre, but it's a long history starting from the 70s, the students who were hung in universities, the people just abducted and thrown in prison, who've died of tuberculosis, who've died at the hands of Gaddafi's murderous regime. There are so many people who were lost in this process. But I think the evolution that you're talking about, the cultural revolution that you talked about, is really the end of tolerance. There were so many opportunities given to Colonel Gaddafi himself. So much patience was granted to him to work to improve the lives of the people, especially in the last 10 years. And they've wasted them. The corruption that had been there increased in the last 5 or 6 years, most apparently by Gaddafi's sons themselves. So it's game over after a long, patient wait and struggle, and it's a total victory, because nothing of this regime will stay. Nothing of this Gaddafi regime has any validity for it to remain, and this great cleansing that's coming upon the Libyan people
Professor, if I could jump in,
is highly awaited and unexpected.
Well, I'm not sure how you feel, but looking at what's happened, the orderliness of how people have come in, taken over, established committees to run their towns, whether it's Benghazi or Al-Bayda, looking at how things have developed in Egypt, in other places where people have taken to the streets, but in a peaceful manner, orderly. They're cleaning up after the revolution, for example, in Egypt. Is there a sense of ownership here and what that's going on in the Arab psyche that we haven't seen in the past, where change has often been chaotic and even sometimes bloody and forceful?
Well, absolutely. That sense of ownership is clearly something that people longed for. They never really felt that they owned their own societies, and also felt deprived of the opportunity to do good for their own societies with their own creativity, with their own thought processes. Everything in Gaddafi's Libya was referring back to Gaddafi. When an employee in the last few years was being fired or mistreated, felt like there was no recourse for him except Saif or Colonel Gaddafi himself. And so now that these two, powerful men, to say the least, are gone, people now feel like their countries are their own, and they need to, sort things out between them, and that's a great feeling.
All right, thanks so much, Khalid Mtawa, Libyan poet. Well, Libya isn't the only North African country facing unrest. These were the scenes in neighbouring Algeria, where riot police tried to prevent opposition parties from staging rallies in the capital. Protests in favour of greater freedoms have been gaining momentum. Well, there have been calls for the country's longtime president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, to step down. But his supporters also took to the streets in his defence. Yemen's ruling party also brushing off the resignation of a leading tribal figure from the president's party. Hussein Abdullah Al-Ahmar leads a family which runs a financial empire that has huge political influence. Well, the ruling party is putting on a brave face.
We are all tribes, and he is a Yemeni citizen like all of us. We all take part in the process of trying to come up with a practical and comprehensive solution, whether through the tribes, citizens or parties. All parts of Yemeni society are trying to come up with a way out of the crisis.
Well, Al-Ahmar's resignation is just the latest in a series of defections from the president's ruling party and inner circle. Hashim Ahlabara has more from the Yemeni capital, Sana'a.
A prominent leader of Yemen's most powerful tribe, Hashid, has announced he's endorsing the anti-government movement. Hussein Abdullah Al-Ahmar leads a family which runs a vast financial empire and has a huge political influence in Yemen. Importantly, Hashid is also the tribe of the president, Ali Abdullah Saleh. Ahmar's resignation from the General People's Congress, the latest in a cascade of defections from the president's ruling party and inner circle.
Down with the regime, down with the liar, down the deceiver, down with injustice. We launched revolution in 1962 against the Imam, and now we're faced with a new Imam who's been ruling us for 32 years.
This latest defection will only serve to boost the resolve of the pro-democracy movement.
God willing, we will continue our protest until the regime steps down.
Ahmad's defection came as another tribe, Bakil, also announced its support for the popular uprising. Bakil controls vast territory in the north and is widely considered the country's largest tribe. For decades, President Saleh has been building strong ties with the tribes to consolidate his grip on power. Now that Hashid and Bakil seem to be abandoning him, the president may find himself almost alone and isolated in the face of a movement gathering pace and determined to oust him. Hashim Al-Barra, AlJazeera, Sana'a.
Well, in Egypt, presidential terms may be now limited to 8 years. That's one of the proposed changes to the constitution that will be put to a referendum ahead of elections later this year. Meanwhile, the ruling military council has apologized after security forces beat protesters during overnight demonstrations in Cairo. Thousands demonstrated in Liberation or Tahrir Square on Friday, calling for faster implementation of reforms. The military councils ordered the immediate release of all those arrested and stressed it did not and would not issue orders to attack protesters. Well, in other news, Ireland's main opposition Fine Gael party is all set to form the next government. The Prime Minister is in waiting, Enda Kenny, has been kissing babies and insisting that economic stability is his first priority. Well, he says he'll try to renegotiate the $113 billion bailout, which stopped Ireland from going bankrupt. Angry voters blamed the ruling Fianna Fáil party for the economic debacle. Well, it's now facing its worst defeat in nearly 80 years. The arrest of a war crime suspect in Bosnia is provoking protests in neighboring Croatia. Thousands of people packed the main square in Zagreb, demanding the government protect war veterans. They're furious at last month's arrest of Tihomir Purda. He denies charges of war crimes during the Balkans War in the 1990s. Protesters describe his potential extradition to stand trial in Serbia as unacceptable, unfair and shameful. In New Zealand, the mayor of Christchurch says at least a third of all buildings must be demolished and rebuilt after Tuesday's earthquake. Officials also say serious questions need to be asked about why some of them collapsed. 145 people died in the quake and more than 200 are still missing. Survivors have been attending Sunday services at church. Our correspondent Andrew Thomas joined one congregation.
The cracks caused by the earthquake in the structure of this church are almost imperceptible, but they are there. And significantly, the church tower has moved a little distance away from the main body of it, which makes the whole structure unsound, certainly not safe enough to hold a church service inside, which is why this service is taking place al fresco in the grounds of the church. The vicar was telling me before it began that he's made sure the congregation is a safe distance back, just in case an after tremor comes and does bring the church down. In Christchurch city centre, of course, most of the churches lie in ruins, most famously the cathedral, where it's believed between 20 and 25 people lost their lives when the spire of that church collapsed into rubble. Very important, though, this Sunday that the community can still gather, can still share experiences, get together and relive and explain what's happened this week and try and find some kind of sense through that. This very much part of the healing process for this city, the opportunity to gather and to share.
There's Andrew there from New Zealand. Well, that's it for this news hour. But don't go away. I'll be back with more news in just a few minutes. Do stay with us here on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back to your international weather forecast. Well, across India, we're seeing a little bit of rain showers activity down towards that southeast portions, but not much to really make any accumulation. What we do need to watch out for is what is happening across the Bay of Bengal. Sri Lanka did have a break from all the flooding that they had over the last couple of weeks, but now we have another system coming in right here. We need to watch this very carefully, watch the movement. If it starts to make its way up towards the northwest, more flooding could be a potential there. Now, Karachi, Pakistan, we're looking at some temperatures that have been increasing over the last couple of days. We expect those to stay very, very high over the really to the beginning of the week, and the haze situation could also be a problem there. Down towards the southern part of Africa, we're looking at some flooding situations for Namibia, as well as into parts of Angola. You can see it right here. That's going to be a problem for the next couple of days, but we're seeing some clearing conditions down towards South Africa, Johannesburg, Durban. You're going to be clearing out. Those temperatures are going to be warming up for you. In Mozambique, you will also be getting a break in your forecast. The rains will start to lighten up as well. Quickly over to the Arabian Peninsula, I want to tell you what is happening there. Temperatures have been quite warm. Doha, 28 degrees. This is what we've been seeing over the last couple of days. The haze has been a problem in the mornings especially. We're looking at Riyadh at 32 and Abu Dhabi is about 31.
Behind the harsh reality of headline stories, creative forces are constantly developing. Across the globe, people use their talents, their imagination, and their vision to break down powerful barriers. From a small backroom theater challenging a despotic regime, to the courage of individuals searching for expression. With rich colors and clear voices, people communicate to a wider world. Artscape, coming soon on Al Jazeera.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download Al Jazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovies store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from Al Jazeera English. See the world in real time. Al Jazeera Mobile.
When atrocities are committed against innocents, the international community must speak with one voice. And today, it has.
The UN Security Council votes unanimously to adopt biting sanctions against Libya's government. Welcome to Al Jazeera, live from Doha. I'm Sami Zaidan. Well, diplomats join a chorus of condemnation against Muammar al-Gaddafi, including his own spokesman at the United Nations.
The Tripoli regime has no longer any credibility. It goes without saying that this resolution represents moral support for our people who are resisting.
Plus, the US president says for the first time, Gaddafi should go. Back in Libya, the uprising against Gaddafi goes on. So does the crackdown against his opposition.